Good evening. It is Monday, August 12th. This is the Guilford Board of Education. I invite you to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you for joining us tonight. I am going to ask right away for a slight change in the order of the agenda. Because we have a guest who is here as part of the superintendent's report, I'm going to ask for a motion to move 8.1 New Solution Special Education Update up to the beginning of the agenda, right before action on minutes. Is there a motion to do so?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, and then we will, after that agenda item, proceed to following the agenda as printed with action of minutes, but I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Freeman.
Thank you very much. I want to start just by thanking Mr. Scanziano and the special education team. The three coordinators are here joining us tonight as well for organizing and shepherding this review. We periodically ask outside experts to come in and look at our work and give us feedback and advice to help us move forward. We are very happy to have Steve Sandoval from New Solutions here tonight. Again, I will remind the board, you have a complete paper report in your folder as you join us at the table tonight. Steve is going to provide us with an executive summary of that report, and there will be time for him to take some questions from the board members as well. We very much consider this, now that the study and the self-reflective component has been completed and facilitated by New Solutions, this now begins the public portion of this conversation. So we don't expect this to be the last conversation. This isn't a final report. After tonight, once we share this with the board, we will absolutely schedule further opportunities for you to discuss this. And Mr. Scanziano and I plan on bringing this executive summary as well as the report and this conversation to the SEPTO group, to the parent group at the elementary level, and to the parent group at the middle level. We do expect that the recommendations here will lead to changes in our practice and may very well have implications for the budget proposal that we bring forward to you this year as well. But with all of that and with all those thank yous, I will turn it over to Steve.
Wonderful. Thank you. I appreciate you having me this evening. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Freeman. My name is Steve Sandoval. I'm a senior consultant for New Solutions K-12. It is my absolute pleasure to speak with you about our review that we conducted last spring on the special ed program, specifically special ed program for students with more significant needs. As you can see on the title, it was on improving services and life outcomes for students with more significant needs was our focus. I do want to reiterate the importance that this is not a review of the entire special education program at Guilford. It was really specific to kids with most, students with the most significant needs. And in particularly those students that are in the K-8 level, who really didn't spend any kind of high school level. Our focus was really just on students with significant needs at the K level. Also, I mentioned to Dr. Freeman that my remarks will be about 25 minutes or so. It's just going to be a general overview or executive summary, and there will be opportunities for questions afterwards. This is click on this. There we go. This is me. As you can see, a senior consultant for New Solutions. I've been with New Solutions for the last year or so. My background is in mental health. I did that for 5 years as a school psychologist way back in the day, about 25 years ago. The last 22 years has been as a special education director in 2 school districts in Colorado. One is a small district, very similar in size as Guilford. Did that for 5 years, and about 19-20 years in a larger school district of about 11 to 15,000 students in that district, in Westminster. So let's get into the project goals for our study. And the very first one was to develop First and foremost, to develop the understanding of current practices at Guilford related to supporting students with more significant needs. Also, kind of comparing those practices to the alignment of best practices for addressing students with significant needs. And then also identifying opportunities to help raise achievement and life outcomes for students to improve work balance for teachers and staff. So that's our goal for our study. Over the course of last spring, we talked with a lot of people. We talked to, first and foremost, Dr. Freeman. We spoke to some parents. We spoke to Mr. Scanziano and his team. I'm very appreciative of Mr. Scanziano and his team, Michael, Heather, Bridget, for being such gracious hosts and helping us support the work moving forward. We also conducted interviews with special education teachers, school psychologists, social workers, speech language pathologists, many folks, central office administrators. There were just a number of different folks that we spoke with, dozens and dozens, that really kind of gave us a really good flavor of things that are happening within the school district. Some of the questions that we would ask are what's working well. On the other hand, what's maybe not working as well. We would ask, what does a typical day look like for a special education student who is in one of these substantially separate programs or learning centers? Also, what is a typical day like for a special education teacher or other related service providers like speech language pathologists and social workers as they support students in these programs? And so those are the types of questions. Of course, our favorite question is the magic wand question at the very end, which is, if we could change one thing, what would that be? And so from that, again, gathering information from a wide variety of people, we're able to kind of put together some great information. We also conducted some data analysis. We got data and information from Jason Scanziano and his team related to students with disabilities, the proportion thereof, school enrollment. We got a really good idea of the different learning centers or programs that are available at Guilford for students with more significant needs. We looked at overall school enrollment and district enrollment as well. We were able to collect that and analyze that data as well. And then finally, I conducted a number of classroom observations. As we know, it only goes so far. If you're looking at information and data or talking with folks, you actually need to see it with your own two eyes. And I was probably in at least 12 classrooms, not just classrooms for students that are substantially separate programs, but also regular classrooms where a lot of the students were spending a lot of their time in there as well. So that was really useful. From that, we did culminate a findings report. I believe that you have that in front of you, and Dr. Freeman has seen it, as well as Mr. Scanziano. And you will notice in that report, and we'll talk a little bit about this evening, that we truly believe that a short list is better than a long list. Nobody has the bandwidth to do 100 things or even a dozen things in many respects, especially with all the hundreds of things you already have on your plates as we speak. But it was important for us to come up with a short list of what we consider opportunities that the district can try moving forward. Let's start with commendations. There were a number of things that we were just really impressed with at Guilford schools, and these were among them. We could probably list again a dozen or more, but these are the ones that really stood out from our conversations and from observations. I'm not going to read these to you, but I'll give you a few seconds to read these yourselves. So some really good stuff happening, certainly at Guilford. Here are some of the quotes that some of our teachers and administrators mentioned. And again, these are just three. It was really hard to choose three. To be honest with you, there were dozens of really great comments and quotes that were made by staff, ranging from really staff and parents at all levels, special education, general education teachers, administrators, and so on and so forth. Again, I will link this to you. You can just see some of the quotes that were mentioned here on the commendations part. The next slide gets into the summary of opportunities. And again, I'm not going to read these to you because we're going to go over each one of them one by one. But just to give you a few seconds to kind of get a general scope of the different opportunities that we saw were the main priorities. Again, keeping in line with our promise that we wanted to keep a short list of opportunities. So let's go over each one by one, starting with the very first one, which is it's 1A. So prioritize placements in programs for students with significant special needs based on student need over student age or grade. So 1A really gets into specialized programs to the extent practical in a small school district. Districts are tasked with supporting students across a wide range of needs through various in and out of district services and supports. Doing this well is very challenging work, especially in smaller districts such as your own. And I can definitely resonate with that, having been a director in a small district myself. And in fact, they tend to be magnified in smaller districts. So that becomes a challenge. Here are a couple of the quotes that were mentioned by some of the staff members. One was a special education teacher, another one was a middle school educator, but I think really can point to the primary themes that we read with regard to this opportunity 1A. One is that these programs should not necessarily be called ABA. According to one, actually, there was one special education teacher quote, but there are several teachers that mentioned this. Some kids in these programs don't really need traditional ABA support. And for those of you who don't know what ABA is, it does stand for Applied Behavior Analysis. They were really initially popularized for young students with autism. It's a very highly structured approach to help reinforce desired actions and behaviors, but also to reduce undesired actions and behaviors. Oftentimes, ABA methodologies require a very highly trained practitioner who's really undergone not only training, but also years of experience in doing it and doing it well. We do recognize that ABA, and certainly we found this at Guilford, that ABA can mean different things in practice to different people based on their background, experience, and training. And we did find that as we talked with a number of people, either mental health folks or special education teachers, or in some cases parents, and most definitely paraprofessionals, almost everyone had a sort of slightly different definition of ABA, and that could be problematic for the district in that regard. Another thing that we saw is that sometimes there was a wide focus of students, a wide variety of needs of students in same programs. And this teacher, in fact, I was a middle school educator, felt that really having both students with behavior needs on one hand and students with mental health needs is not necessarily working. And we know that there's an overlap sometimes, that kids that have behavior needs also have mental health, but not always the case, especially kids that have mental health needs in areas of depression or anxiety, but to have them in classrooms with kids that have real significant behaviors is only going to increase anxiety and that's certainly not decrease it. So that was sort of the point that was made by this particular teacher. Like in most school districts, Guilford Public Schools learning centers tend to tailor programs that are considered multi-categorical, which means that students are with a variety of needs are often in the same learning center, as sort of depicted here in this graph. So if you can see that this whole slide, kind of view this as one classroom where you have one student with one need, you have another student with a completely different need. You might have 3 or 4 students with completely different needs. Let's say student 1 primarily has a significant cognitive delays or intellectual impairments. Student 2 might primarily have a significant social or emotional delay. Student 3 might have a severe mobility delay, and then student 4 may have a severe communication delay. And so what is oftentimes typical in Guilford is that there's kids in these programs that are multi-categorical. The good thing, I think, in some ways, is that the grade spans are pretty low. You know, you'll see K2 programs, you'll see 2, 3, 3, 4 programs, 5, 6 programs, and 6, 7 programs. But what we've found is that it's better to have a wider grade span than a wider range of student needs. And so what I mean by that is what's kind of described in this slide over here. Now, as you can see, there's 2 different sort of sections. These represent 2 different classrooms. And so although maybe the grade span may be a bit wider, when I say a bit wider, we're talking only 1 to 2 grade levels. Not like, we're not going to have kindergartners with 6th grade students or 5th grade students, but maybe 1 or 2 grades expanded, but to break it down in such a way that you have students that have more similar needs. For example, need 1, which could be cognitive delay, along with students with perhaps mobility delays. And we get that some students have both mobility, cognitive delays. They're not necessarily mutually exclusive of one another, but this is just an example of what the district considered. Another could be the third and the second piece to your right, which you might have kids with more social emotional delays in the same classroom with those with severe communication delays. And remember, we're not really advocating or recommending programs for just students with autism. Rather, we'd be looking at programs that have similar needs, that show kids that have similar needs, because disability category does not necessarily mean that they have similar needs. And we know that with students with autism, they might have high functioning needs versus students that have lower functioning types of needs. So we're looking at needs and rather than the labels in this regard. The next priority is opportunity 1B. It's to ensure it's, again, it's under 1, but 1B is to ensure a continuum of services across all grade levels. This is the structure that we see across Guilford. ABA programs, got that down as far as that's concerned in terms of the availability of those programs from kindergarten all the way to 8th grade. Sure, high school as well. We just didn't study high school. But in our study from K-8, clearly there were opportunities for kids in ABA programs to be supported there. However, once you get into 7th grade, then there's BLCs, behavior learning centers. It's called a blended learning center. And then you have the TLC, which is therapeutic learning center. And some kids that maybe move from 6th grade ABA, sometimes, as Mr. Scanziano mentioned, sometimes they do go into, they're better served in those BLC or TLC classrooms. But, you know, the question is, you know, why wouldn't those classrooms be available to even kids at an earlier age, if that indeed is most appropriate for them, let's say at the more elementary levels. Okay, so that would be another opportunity there. Okay. Opportunity 2A, this gets into to prioritize purposeful inclusion with appropriate support while balancing the need for meaningful learning. This really gets into being clear on the targeted and being clear and targeted about the goal for inclusion for each student. Okay. We didn't really get the impression that for all students that were matriculated in regular classrooms that it was necessarily always meaningful. So this is sort of oftentimes what we see in many school districts across the country. Students with modified curriculum are working on alternate standards. It's oftentimes they could be in a substantially separate program, really hyper-focused on relevant skills, and then lunch again, and then maybe general education specials. Obviously, this does vary depending on the school. But oftentimes this is the case for many of our learning centers. For kids that are on grade level, that may have behavioral challenges, maybe they spend a majority of their time in the general education classroom, again with lunch, and then perhaps a portion of their day working with a mental health provider or maybe with a special ed teacher who is especially adept at working with students with behavioral challenges. And so that might be sort of a common sort of generalized schedule for them in that regard. Okay. In my observations, especially, I think at Guilford, is that there were attempts to make inclusion meaningful for many of the students, but in reality, it didn't always turn out that way. Our core paraprofessionals, who are amazing people and very compassionate, hardworking, oftentimes I think they're just juggling, working with the student and addressing his or her needs as best they can. I know some of the general education teachers felt that a lot of the paraprofessionals were sort of taking control of some of the instruction, but one of the quotes that was mentioned that you'll see later is that they're not really teachers. And so I really question as to whether or not students in my classroom are making the gains that we're hoping, that everybody's hoping that they're making in that regard. And so I think it's just a matter of kind of discussing, describing what do we really want to achieve for our students with significant needs when it comes to inclusion, when it comes to substantially separate programs, and to ensure that there's feedback that's provided by a number of stakeholders, including parents, including district administrators, of course, special educators, and general educators. Here are some of the quotes. Again, I won't read these to you, that really got into what I saw was one of the cruxes of some of the issues, was there seemed to be a hyper dependence really on many of the paraprofessionals in almost all of the classrooms that I observed from the general ed teachers. But here are some of the quotes that were read. So you can see some of the consternation was oftentimes from regular ed teachers and special ed teachers, but even the paraprofessionals themselves. Again, they are hardworking, highly compassionate, really want to be successful with kids, but sometimes they don't know how to be successful with the students. And keep them engaged and interested in learning for a long period of time, because they felt like we really don't have that time to communicate. I think their contracts are such that they arrive when students arrive and they leave when students leave. And so there's not a lot of time built into their schedules to ensure that they're communicating, planning, and prioritizing the learning day for the students with disabilities, oftentimes with regular ed teachers. So that's one. As we get into 2B, it's meeting academic and life skill goals for students in special ed programs using high quality curriculum materials. Now, that's not to say that there are no curriculum materials available for students with significant disabilities at Guilford. Quite the contrary, there's a lot of different types of curriculum materials that are being used. The problem is sometimes teachers don't know to whom they go to in order to get the curriculum materials. Many go to the special ed department, and oftentimes they are rewarded with the curriculum materials that they requested. And in some cases, they go directly to the principal, who provides the curriculum materials that they've requested. The problem with that is there's sort of inconsistencies at times. It's oftentimes principal dependent, or sometimes there are inconsistencies in the types of curriculum that are being used to support students with significant disabilities. And so we heard that quite often from teachers. That type of sort of mindset is that we're not exactly sure who to go to and what we do. I noticed that my neighbor's curriculum materials are different from my own. And curriculum for students with significant needs is actually quite a bit more robust in many cases than students without disabilities or students with more mild disabilities. Not only are they wanting, we're wanting them to learn pre-academic skills in the areas of reading, writing, and arithmetic. We also want to make sure that they're receiving instruction for life skills, relationship building, technological access to the curriculum, like speech to text writers or text readers or things like that. Self-care and hygiene is a very important part. We just don't rely on the parents for that. They're oftentimes amazing, but it's important that students with significant needs also get that type of instruction at school. Home care, like, cleaning and dishes and laundry and sort of the life skills that help them become functional as they become older. Those types of things beyond just the reading and writing a curriculum are incredibly important for students with significant needs. Priority number 3 gets into prioritize program staff expertise rather than headcount. I don't know if I like the term headcount. We probably need to look at that. Really, it's just focusing on ensuring that staff that are hired are the ones that are truly comfortable and have skills and have expertise in working with the diversity of students that we have in our special education programs. Our special education programs are nationwide, are probably the most diverse in terms of the learning needs of the students there. We have students with very mild needs that are reading at grade level. We have some students that are not reading at grade level and far below that for a variety of disabling reasons. And so we want to make sure that rather than looking at just sort of hiring bodies to kind of support service, change the focus toward addressing staff, special ed teachers. It could be the utilization of maybe more mental health staff or other related service providers, occupational therapists, to sort of address that sort of specialization that would be needed to support these programs just a tad better, right? It's not about, putting just a person with the kid, but also to make sure that they're providing the needs that kid had, or providing the expertise that kid needs in order to function throughout the day. We certainly find that as expertise increases, the over-reliance on other adults, it decreases quite a bit because of that. So there's that. We see that in the district at Guilford that it's a 1-to-1 ratio for kid, and that includes not just the paraprofessionals with the students, but also the teachers as well. And that's pretty unusual as far as the amount of support. That certainly is one of the commendations we mentioned, is that you really support students with significant needs. Not a lot of districts can say that. Guilford, you're amazing in terms of the amount of resources you provide your students, but it is 1-to-1. Generally speaking, nationwide for successful programs, it tends to be around 3-to-1. Again, focusing mostly on specialization over just paraprofessionals, for example, that may just be providing supervision support. This was a quote made by one of the special ed teachers in the specialized program, so one of the learning centers there. Very true. So what we see is that the research shows that it's far better to prevent behaviors, not to remediate or just manage behaviors after the fact by those who are comfortable and skilled in addressing those student behaviors. This is what the research says in terms of ensuring that we hire for expertise. And it's far better to teach or coach others on the capacity to address difficult student challenges as they occur, rather than rely on 1 or 2 individuals in some cases. It's far better to teach students how to read and do basic math from a teacher who is an expert in teaching reading or math than someone who hasn't had that training. I can certainly relate. My background is in mental health. You don't want to put me in front of any group of students in teaching them math. Unfortunately, that is happening in a lot of our school districts in this regard. So we want to make sure we match the teacher's strength to the student needs as they occur. And that's sort of the point in all that. Okay. All right, we'll move on to the next one. Yes, this one is create a dedicated, perhaps part-time leadership position for each type of specialized program as the district moves towards a more targeted program. This is probably something that's going to take some time. But as you move more towards specialized programming, more targeted types of programs, look into someone who perhaps part-time or full-time is truly energized, truly has the skills to support and address student needs and advise through perhaps coaching, making sure that the resources are available for teachers, making sure that students' outcomes are moving forward. That's not to say that Mr. Scanziano's coordinators, special education supervisors are not equipped. They are highly competent and smart individuals. But just like, as I mentioned, serving as a special education director for over 20 years, having mental health background, I'm not going to be necessarily the one who's going to advise on very specialized programs that are non-mental health related. But I am going to maybe tap on the shoulder and pay them perhaps a stipend of $10,000 to $15,000 stipend to support full or part-time work to help advise and build some of these programs in such a way that they become specialized. And so that's really the point on this. It's not only just hiring the special ed teachers who are specialized and really know their stuff when it comes to teaching this stuff, but also hiring and making sure you're putting in front of those teachers a supervisor, even if it's just part-time, who can do that work and do that well. So this is what a program leader can do in terms of addressing program purpose, even things like program name, right? The size of it, instructional materials. This is the person who can really advise that, okay, guys, we just have this menagerie of curriculum across the district. It seems to be very principle dependent. We're going to move in a different direction and can advise Mr. Scanziano on the direction of what that might look like based on their research on what the best curriculum is available for that type of thing. They could help support maybe some hiring, not necessarily the evaluating piece, especially if they are teachers, of course, but in terms of coaching and supporting teachers in that respect. And the last one gets into the opportunity to reduce the number of transitions students in specialized programs encounter throughout their time in the district. This is what we see right now at Guilford. Not uncommon, obviously. You have these 4 different levels: Guilford Lakes Elementary School, Baldwin Middle, that's grades 5, 6, Adams 7, 8, and Guilford High School 9, 12. So if I'm a preschool student with, let's say, autism in one of the APA programs, I'd be in Guilford Lakes Elementary School likely, from preschool through grade 4. And then I would matriculate to Baldwin Middle School, 5, 6, and then Adams Middle School for 7, 8, and then Guilford High School. That's 4 transitions. I know that's 1 transition for everybody, but it's especially difficult for students with significant needs, especially students with autism that really need the routine and predictability in their day. They often find comfort in knowing what comes next. And so that's important for a lot of our students in these programs. And also, if we're looking at transitions, research has shown that the more transitions that students have, the more regression of skills students have, especially students that have the highest needs in any school district. And so by reducing that could be done perhaps by consolidating the 7-8 program currently at Adams Middle School to perhaps Baldwin Middle School, which currently houses the 5-6 program. Again, we talked about earlier about expanding grade spans is perfectly fine. Again, research has shown that if you add a grade or 2, it's not going to make a tremendous impact so long as the needs of the students are relatively the same. If they continue to be multi-categorical, then that's not going to work very well. But if you change it in such a way that the needs are relatively the same, grade spans increasing 1 or 2 years is advised. Okay. Okay, and with that, I'm done with my remarks. Thank you, Anne. Do you have any questions for me?
So I just, this is Katie Bell-Tracy again, the chair. Thank you so much, both for this presentation, and most certainly for the report. Do any of my colleagues have questions? You wanna ask? Yeah, go ahead, Dr. Hirsch.
You lauded the fact that we have a one-to-one staff ratio, unique to most other programs. At the same time, when we talk to our teachers, they are very stressed. That is, they feel overworked. Is that a function of a misalignment in the way we organize them? Or is the one-to-one ratio not as powerful as we thought it was?
We find that it's less about the one-to-one support and more about ensuring that their skills, comfort levels, and expertise is matched to the student needs. And I think a lot of the stress we heard, I think a lot, the middle school teachers said it best, is that, in placing students with mental health needs alongside students with real significant disruptive behavior needs, isn't really working. It's hard for anybody to feel successful, even in a classroom that may have a one-to-one parent in that classroom. So that's an example for that, right? I think by restructuring some of the programs that focus on similar needs of students and also specializing staff, that'll probably help that concern quite a bit.
It's a quote that I didn't see in the presentation tonight, but I think one teacher noted that at times I feel more like an air traffic controller than our instructor. So I think that as we have grown these programs, we've experienced some mission creep, and that this is exactly what we were looking for in telling us that we've grown the resources appropriately, but now we have to think about how we're deploying and planning around those resources. And it may be that we need more specialized teachers, which would in fact require us to have fewer, less specialized paraprofessionals, and teachers will feel less like supervisors and organizers and more like direct student support. And so again, I think that we've spent 10 years building out and growing these programs, and they have reduced the number of outplacements. And now is a really good time, with the appropriate amount of resource, to think about how we're deploying those resources.
Yeah, well said, Dr. Freeman, and Guilford is a very, very highly desirable place to work. And so you really are coming with a lot of special education teachers that have some real impressive skills and expertise levels. I think it's building upon that. I think it's now focusing on ensuring that they are working a little bit more specialized with certain kids that have those needs, and maybe less so with kids that they're not comfortable or don't have the skills for. And I get it, being a special ed director and dealing with teacher shortages, etc. I know it's very difficult at times to hire for specialization, but finding good people, smart people, and then training them accordingly is also another sort of strategy that districts can use to ensure that they're caught up with their knowledge and skills.
And I think it's really important that as we look at these recommendations, we think about how we share, roll out, and plan around these recommendations. Because when you look, right, you see some suggestions in here that we are very well staffed at the lowest levels. And the recommendations are that we are less well staffed at the administrative and leadership level. And I appreciate the way the recommendation is written. It doesn't say hire more special ed administration, but what it says is think really carefully about the leadership and not necessarily continuing to focus on that one-to-one, an adult for every child. It's thinking about the programming, the strategy behind that programming. And that sometimes does require instructional expertise and administrative capacity. Doesn't have to mean hiring more administrative FTEs, but how do you think about that administrative capacity so teachers, again, don't feel that they're air traffic controllers? I mean, that was just a quote that leapt out to me.
Other questions?
When we have a unique district, obviously, with the amount of elementary schools and 2 middle schools. I guess my question related to, case number 5, have we had cases in the past in which we've kept 5th graders at an elementary school or 6th graders at an elementary school?
We very much make that decision individually based on the student need. So if it's best for that student to remain for another year at Guilford Lakes, or, we've had students due to age and due to needs skip Adams altogether and go to the high school. So we really try our best to make those decisions as individually as we possibly can.
Right.
But I think that there's an assumption on the part of most parents, and I think that we fed this assumption, right? I think that we've made really thoughtful, intentional decisions about inclusion, mainstreaming, homeschool. And so by building the programs at every geographic location, there is an assumption. And so I think it is about re-educating and unlearning at the community level that, and I had even, the one about the transitions, that they look the same size, but remember that in the middle level, we're having students go through a transition every 2 years. That means it's 1 year of arriving and 1 year of planning to leave. So that's a topic that has come up in other conversations, that has come up in the start time conversation, that's come up in facilities conversations. And so I think there's a lot to thank you, Steve. I think there's a lot to look at, the far left and the far right are both 4-year clusters. So those arrows could be twice as big as the 2 arrows in the middle. And so there's lots of ways to think about, and again, I appreciate the way the recommendation was written. How do you reduce transitions? Doesn't have to necessarily be reduced to those 3 arrows. There's all kinds of ways to do it. I think there's a lot of parent education that's going to go into that. It would be different for a parent to say, wait a minute, my child's not necessarily going to be at Baldwin. It might be from an elementary school straight to Adams, or Baldwin straight to the high school. We do it, but it's more the exception than the rule, I think.
And I think too, the notion of individuality is very important. And so when we look at student behaviors of, a 4th grader transitioning into 5th grade, and an 8th grader transitioning, or 7th grader transitioning to 8th grade, behaviors can look very, very different in different students with different disabilities. And so that's where we as special ed administrators and our teams, our IEP teams, make the decisions. So it's not a decision that myself or the coordinators who are here tonight make individually. That is a team of experts coming together to say, this is where, when, how, and for what duration special ed services should be delivered. And that does include location as well. So, yeah.
So the essence of this report is very strategic. It says we got a very good program, but there are ways in which we can make it better. And the way we make it better is the way we think about use of time and people.
Absolutely.
So my request as a board member, my question as a board member is, what's the process now that the administration is going to go through to, in some sense, offer an alternative strategic plan to what we're doing now based on this report?
And I think Dr. Freeman alluded to, our next step is presenting this information to our parent community. Our parents are vital members of our teams. Our parents aid in the planning for their students, as well as, the staff that we employ as a Board of Education. So I think it's vitally important that we bring parents into this conversation before making any decisions moving forward. And so,
especially when some of those decisions have been intentional. Our focus on mainstreaming and integration, and our focus on trying to keep students in essentially as close or more close to grade level bands, rather than the shift to non-categorical is a philosophical shift. And we are going to want to explain this carefully and thoroughly to that parent community. So we plan on tonight with all of you, September, October, November, with SEPTO elementary parents and middle school parents. There might be some early changes that can be part of this budget cycle, but most likely bigger ones. And it could be over time. It could be that we begin scheduling more categorically for longer periods with younger students who are coming in, and not trying to dramatically change the deal for parents who have been in for the program, been invested in a program over years already.
I think I would add that one of our teachers made the quote that our parents trust us. And I want to maintain that trust. I want to maintain those relationships. These are relationships we have with our parents for sometimes 12, years, if not longer. And so students have been programmed in a certain way. And as Dr. Freeman mentioned, there's a level of education if we're going to make a change to that, that we're gonna have to undertake.
But we're not clear yet if it's sort of structural changes with sort of markers that we roll out, or if it becomes a gradual change over time as we enroll new students. And again, I think we're going to be informed to large part as we listen to the parents and how they respond to these recommendations.
I agree with that priority. Similarly, teachers themselves on the line, seeing this report, probably have their own response to it that is crucial. Have they already seen this report? Has there been a conversation with
So
staff
I'm
and
presenting Wednesday at our administrative retreat to our
so I assume
principals,
there'll be a
and then we'll do a
constituent
roll
group
up
that
to our staff
this is
as well.
crucial.
And although the study only really looked at really pre-K-8, I think there's value in sharing this information with our high school staff as well, and our transition age, teachers.
And again, I think they're really going to appreciate having been asked and having been heard, and we're going to want their feedback as much as we want from the parents. And now, how do we embrace these different, I mean, there's really about 7 recommendations in there if you parse out the part A and part Bs. How do we now strategically go after this in a way that is best for our students? And I believe Steve mentioned it on one of the first slides, and supportive of the people who are doing the work on the ground right now.
And just one point of clarification, I'm sorry, just one point of clarification on the slide that showed the through line of our programming, the Blended Learning Center does span 5 through 8. So we go from more substantially separate K4 into a blended learning center 5-6 as well as 7-8.
Okay.
Just a point of clarification.
And the Therapeutic Learning Center was something that launched the high school first and very recently pushed down into Adams. And so again, a lot of this work began at the 2 ends and worked towards the center. And I'm not sure that everybody can relate to what I'm going to say. But I am so excited to see these recommendations based on the work that we started 10 years ago. 10 years ago, most of the students that are spoken about in this report would have been outplaced. And to have them now in the district with this level of support built around them, and now the opportunity to learn from that experience for a decade and begin shaping it. I mean, again, we grew from the 2 ends to the middle, and now that we have it, we can really take a step back and be thoughtful and strategic about how we improve it moving forward.
I noticed that the report is benchmarked on best practices, and I wonder whether there are student outcome data available from the best practices compared with student outcome data at Guilford High School or Guilford Elementary through 8. Has there been research on that?
Yes, generally, we look at student outcomes through the IEP process. So it's very much an individualized process. Where we generalize that out to the larger population or students without disabilities is through state testing. And so many of our students in the substantially separate programs participate in an alternative test. So there really isn't a direct correlation. But what we do is we look at the skills associated and the downward extensions of the grade level standards to help us bring our students up to or as close to grade level standards as we possibly can. And so there is some data around that. It's not as clear as it would be for students without disabilities.
I'm just curious about the outcomes of the students who might have been through a program similar to this one that's recommended versus those who have been through Guilford.
Right.
Would we expect different
I see.
outcomes
Yeah.
down
Well, it's
the
a
road?
fascinating question,
Yeah.
Steve. I'd invite you to jump in. And so because of the nature of the student population that we're talking about, Steve, do you know if would it be possible to find benchmark districts that were similar enough to Guilford in size and in socioeconomic demographics that have been practicing the model that you're pushing us toward, or a model that's more like the one you're encouraging us to move toward? And if we identified 3 of those districts that had been in that model for 5 years, could you compare their student performance to ours? I worry because the students in these programs literally all have IEPs, individualized educational programs. And I don't know, I mean, I worry when you do that on state testing for the general population. I'd get really nervous and would invite Jason and Steve to check my thinking on that.
wholeheartedly.
Yes, we can, I can talk with Nate about getting that, information, Dr. Freeman. What with one caveat, because we talked about the, when we're talking about outcomes for students with significant needs, we're not just talking about academic outcomes.
Right.
Those are important, and those are the ones that are assessed, and those are the ones we can find online. Excuse me, it's State Departments for sure. What we can't find are the other just as important and arguably more.
And that's what I worry about,
things.
right? Quantifying those.
Is how do we quantify those other pieces that are as important, at least as important, as I mentioned before, to hygiene of home care, occupational skills, access skills, those types of things are needed as well. We can't find that data easily, at least comparable data.
And those
What I
are,
can say anecdotally is that we start transition skills, which include activities of daily living, independent living skills in accordance with State Department standards and IDEA. So it's the annual review following their 14th birthday. We begin those skills with them at traditionally fit 6th grade going into 7th grade is generally when kids are turning, 13. And so we have a continuum of supports throughout Baldwin Adams and the high school, and now our Guilford transition program, which looks at the activities of daily living. We are teaching kids how to cook, how to clean, how to care for themselves, how to navigate transportation when needed. And quite honestly, we have a lot of our special ed students who go to college, go to 2 or 4 year colleges, which is I'm very, very proud of. So, there are students who participate in college-based transition programs. So places like the Famous Academy at Mitchell College, the Clemson University, the Threshold program at Leslie University. So we have supported our kids through their 4 years of high school and then beyond in those areas as well. So really proud of that work. Yeah.
I think what you're both saying too about next steps, for Dr. Hirsch's question, and there's a lot of conversation that has to happen, and perhaps a gradual approach, which is great, but it would potentially, right, have us, for instance, if we did more combining of a 5 through 8, building up the program a little bit at Baldwin, right? Which would be space, staff, whatever. I think we have all those things, right? And then looking or building up, and maybe this is a question. Is it building up staff expertise or just identifying staff expertise and using them differently, or both?
I think it's both.
Right.
Yeah, I will say,
Thank you, Steve.
Steve mentioned, special education being a shortage area. It's a shortage area across the nation right now.
Right.
We're very fortunate that we are a desirable school district. We continue to be. We do great work here. We have hired out of the state of Connecticut to bring in individuals with expertise in behavior, individuals who have experience. When we're analyzing applications for candidates, we are looking at what is their expertise, where did they teach, for how long did they teach, what additional certifications do they bring to the table. And then from there, we develop a professional learning plan for special educators. And so one of our initiatives this year is to bring all of our K-8 special ed teachers Orton Gillingham training, which we have a substantial number of associate level already trained or going through the training. This will bring all of our staff on board. So it's increasing not our training to increase our capacity in-house as well. But when we're in our search, even in a shortage area, we're doing our best to find individuals who we know will fit, essentially the unwritten job description of what a special education teacher is in that position. Because all of our special ed teachers have a K-12 special ed certification, but we know that no one can cert K-12, and everybody has individual likes, dislikes, strengths, weaknesses. And so we do our best to really tailor those. We work with our staff on transitioning within Guilford Public Schools. If somebody is like, I want to try middle school for a year, we always give them that opportunity, and sometimes they like it, sometimes they don't. And we support them with training around that. I will say I'm very thrilled to have the coordinators that I do have, who come each with a unique set of skills and backgrounds. So Heather's expertise in pre-K and Michael Bridget's expertise in behavior as a school psychologist. Both Heather and I and Michael Bridget happen by trade, along with Steve, to be school psychologists. Jackie brings to the table an expertise in reading. And we utilize each other's, we use our coordinators meetings weekly to bounce ideas off of one another. We do case review, and we really look deeply at one another for input on how to proceed. And so I'm really fortunate to have the three individuals who are here today.
So, and I want to say this piece carefully. It's in response to the previous question. Part of what you can read through some of those recommendations is an encouragement to start looking at certain teachers who are connected to specific programs and thinking them in the same way that we think of, say, a department head. So that individual teacher who's developed that area of expertise
Yes.
or who was hired in with it might then be afforded some release time to use that expertise to support the other folks in the program. And I want to be really careful to say that the report suggests that there might be resource for that in some of the, right? It doesn't necessarily mean hiring more administrative positions or more teaching positions to cover that release time. It might mean that as we move in that direction, there will be less of a need for the one-to-one that we have at the lowest level of training, not the lowest level of commitment or compassion or care for our kids, but they're the least trained positions that we bring in. And again, that is a careful and emotional conversation to have with the parent community, because of the way the parent community views the support that paraprofessional makes available to their child. So we need to think this part through really carefully.
Absolutely. And I want to thank the administration for doing this study. Steve, I again want to thank you and your group. You know, I'm going to echo what my predecessor has said about other studies we've done. We can't be afraid to look at what we're doing and recognize areas for improvement. Change is hard. But it's, you know, the way we maintain excellence in this district is by self-assessment and self-reflection and bringing folks in to help us be better.
This report's going to go on our website. It's going to be available to anybody who wants to see it. And Jason and I are still going to spend a lot of time having some thoughtful conversations with the community around it.
And it's fine for change to be incremental and to take our time and to be thoughtful about getting all the input you know, along the way. But so important that we're not afraid to do these kinds of assessments and really identify where there's room for improvement. So this is terrific. Thank you.
Again, I want to be sensitive to Steve's time, and I want to thank
Yes,
Steve.
Captain Wong.
And again, I want to thank Jason and Jackie and Heather and Michael Bridget, who have all been in retreat all day long and still came to this board meeting today to be here with all of us tonight. We very much appreciate it.
And I'm guessing I am speaking on behalf of my colleagues. We would love to hear about this as we move forward. Be engaged in some of these discussions as appropriate.
And in fact, I would encourage board members, maybe not in numbers that bring us to quorum,
Yes.
but to be at those, to be at the SEPTO meeting, to be at the elementary parent meeting, to be at the middle school parent meeting, even if you're not one of those parents, but to be there as a board member, to be part of those conversations and to hear those conversations.
And not for a micromanaging purpose, but to avoid quorum. It would be good just to coordinate if you're thinking of going to one of those. I'm happy to be a resource. No, I'm happy to have it flow through me, but just
if you all showed up at the same one, it could become an unposted board meeting.
That's right. We can't have 5 of us show up, so we can distribute ourselves well.
I just think that would be, and it would be supportive and important to hear those conversations.
Absolutely. Well, and thank you. I was going to ask you about that, but you made the invitation before I had a chance. So, Steve, again, thank you so much for joining us, and we really appreciate your time.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Very much appreciated.
Thank you.
And you guys are welcome to stay, but you'd be insane.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jason.
Thank you, Jason. All right, I am going back to agenda item 3, action on minutes. I am first going to ask for a motion to approve the July 8th, 2024 regular Board of Education meeting.
So, second.
Any comments? I did have one correction for page 5 and I wrote it out, but I'll say it and I'm happy to provide it. At the end adjournment, we actually make 2 votes, take 2 votes, one to leave executive session, which is pretty much written here on a motion made by Mrs. Peck and seconded by Dr. Hirsch. The board voted unanimously to return to public session. I would insert at 8:30 p.m. period. And then on a motion made by Mr. Scretta, these are from my notes, and seconded by Dr. Hirsch, the board voted unanimously to adjourn the meeting at 8:31 p.m.
Sense.
Are there other comments or corrections to the minutes? And I just like to note, those are the things we were supposed to provide Terry. Terry could not have known that on her own, so. Terry, thank you. All right, so there's a motion and a second, all in favor of the approving the minutes as amended.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Is that everybody? Any, and,
I
okay,
abstain.
so that's 5 ayes and 1 abstention. Ms. Fenelon is abstaining, she was not here. Okay, approval of the minutes for the special meeting on Tuesday, August 6th. Is there a motion to approve these minutes? Second, okay. Any comments? Yes, it was a short one. All in favor?
Aye.
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 And everyone here was there. Okay, terrific. All right. Next is public comments on the agenda. We actually do not have any public here, so we're going to move on to agenda number 5, review and approval of expenditures for the month.
Thank you very much. Are you ready for me?
I am.
I'm gonna do the best I can. I did forget my reading glasses, but we're gonna do this. Jen, do you want mine? Are they just generic?
Yes.
Yeah. Showing my age here. Thank you. So there's actually there's 2 reports tonight. One is for the fiscal year 23-24, which is what I'm gonna jump into first. The expenditures and encumbrances through the end of June were 99.85% of the budget as compared to 99.99% from the year prior. Salaries and employee benefits were in line with the prior year. Tuition was lower than the prior year. Purchase services, supplies and materials, capital and transportation, and capital were all higher. Transportation was actually lower. As the public knows, the budget for the Board of Ed is passed as a lump sum, but we do go through line items and through categories. There were a number of categories that went way over their budget. Just as an example, building management was over by $504,000, which was 149% of what was originally budgeted. So there has been on the agenda tonight is transfers to the different parts of the budget that need to be approved to balance the books, so to speak. And that when we do that, there will still be an overage to give back to the town of $103,228.48. This is less than 1% of the operating budget. And I cannot say it enough about the impressive and outstanding job done by Linda Trudeau and her team to get this massive budget to come in at less than 1%. It's just something I could never do. So, but this is truly impressive, and thank you for all the hard work that you guys do. Thank you. In terms of the end of the year, the biggest piece is tracking down people who are vendors that have not submitted their bills and getting those paid. So in the month of June, we get bills that were from October of 2023 that we would like to have paid more on time, but we got them paid before the end of the fiscal year. And that's, and so the total payments on the warrant for the month of June of 2024 is $624,203.67. And that does close out that fiscal year.
That's right. So we're gonna be reviewing two sets. So the first vote then is to approve the July 2024 financial reports for fiscal year 2023-24. As Ms. Baldwin just went through them and noted, we did discuss these in some detail in the operations committee just prior. So is there a motion to approve the July 2024 financial reports for fiscal year 23-24?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Abstentions? Opposed? No. Okay. Next.
Okay, so now we move on to July of 2024. Which is the beginning of the new fiscal year. But July is and historically always is a very busy month. So at this point, we've expended expenditures and encumbrances for the month of July were 9.14% of the budget as compared to 9.48% for the year prior. We did receive a small $318.40 for tuition. Right now, salaries are in line with the prior year. Employee benefits are higher than the prior year. I'm going to get into that in a little bit. Purchase services right now is lower, but this is due to timing of encumbrances and payments. The percentage for tuition, the percent of the budget is higher than the prior year, but again, this is due to timing of payments, as well as supplies and materials. And we have the capital leases that were paid. Transportation's in line. So the total warrants for the month of July are $2,243,522.51. And again, a lot of what's going on with this big submission is the things that are paid up front before the school year starts. Annual pension, OPEB contributions, capital lease payments. For example, we had to purchase laptops and Chromebooks for the new year. We have to pay for them and then we get reimbursed. So that reimbursement will come later in the year. Annual dues, renewals, softwares, memberships, things of that nature, as well as the members of the district that are full year salaries and summer employees. So that's the reason for such a high number this month, and it's always this way. That's it.
All right.
Thanks, Joe.
Again, so I am now going to ask for a vote of approval for the July 2024 financial reports for fiscal year 2024-25. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed and abstentions? None. All right. Thank you. Now up to agenda item number 6, communications. Does anyone have communications to share? Oh, Andy back class, thank you. I did want to share one communication. So at our last meeting, one of the topics was on an exchange student. And we were discussing a coming exchange student and how does that happen? How does someone come? I'm actually friends with the family that is accepting one of the exchange students, and she reached out to me. I watched the Board of Ed meeting to see if you talked about the exchange student we are hosting, and I see that you did. For the person who asked how the process works, it was initiated by me after seeing a post on Facebook advertising the need for host families. I answered the call to the regional coordinator, and with 2 minutes, she had me filling out the applications. For a variety of reasons, we wanted a semester student instead of a full year, and those students are fewer in number. So I think we had that as a question. She sent me about 5 profiles of students that matched our boy-heavy, sports-oriented family. And we chose Mateo, who is the young man we talked about last month. It is the process in which she actually reached out and they matched. Hopefully he's okay with coming to Connecticut. I believe he has some distant relatives that live nearby, so he might make it easier for family. He's from Northern Italy and apparently plays soccer. And she has a house full of prior and current soccer players. But she was just hoping to share that information with us. So it was very exciting to get that from her. Absolutely. To share that because it's just so great to have these students coming to us. Any other communications? All right. Number 7 is student reports. It is summer. I hope our students are enjoying their summer, and we will not be seeing a student report until October. So we're back up to the superintendent's report. We've done 8.1, so I'm turning it over to you for 8.2.
Thank you very much. I want to begin with just a preliminary enrollment report. Remember, the official enrollment is not taken until October 1st. But we want to begin with a preliminary enrollment report. And obviously, this time of year, we're giving you a look at the enrollment that really focuses at the elementary level. So currently, at the enrollment where we sit today, we're looking at average K through 4 elementary class size of 18. If you look specifically at the kindergarten, where we spent a significant amount of time this year, and particularly during the budget cycle looking at kindergarten, the first note is that we had budgeted for 12 kindergarten sections, and it looks like we will only be enrolling 11 kindergarten sections this year. Last year, remember, we budgeted for 12 and enrolled 13. So this is a different game. I want to draw your attention specifically to Cox. So again, right, and we spoke last year about how it is impossible to predict how the neighborhoods are going to enroll. But last year, we really wrestled with kindergarten class sizes at LEAP that sat in the 13s, right around 13, and then class sizes in other sections that were hitting 19 and 20 as we opened in September. So the news this year is better. We're still looking at Cox that is slightly under-enrolled for 3 sections. But again, if we were to reduce a section there, we would
We'd be
now,
over. Yeah.
before the first day of school, have Ks that were sitting at 19 and 20, when our recommendation is to stay below 20.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that we may see a few more enrollments at Cox. We do see families who enroll in kindergarten through September, so it's not unusual. We don't have any other class sizes that are pushing 19 and 20 as we did last year. But Murphy's Law would suggest to me that the late K enrollments will likely fall at Lakes and not at Cox. So we're going to continue to monitor
Right.
this. We will keep an eye on it. I don't believe that at this moment in time, we're going to see swings or more enrollment that's going to be significant enough that we will be looking to deploy another K section. But we will be watching the numbers and we'll continue to monitor this. All of the other grade levels that you see 1 through 4 in all 3 schools now do fall within the board's recommendations. And the last note that I would make, if these numbers hold at Cox specifically, it is very likely that in this year's budget presentation, you'll see the 3 Ks collapse into 2 first grades, where the recommendation then goes to, I believe it's 16 to 22. And so again, we're going to watch those numbers. We'll watch how they unfold across the whole school year. We won't make a decision in that area until December when we present a budget to you. But right now, this is the look at enrollment. It is looking to be essentially stable.
And this is including the open choice students.
In grade
Yes, this
Yeah.
includes open choice students who are currently enrolled in first grade at Lakes. That's where we ended up with those placements.
Jones, no?
We offered seats in both Lakes and Jones. We only had an individual student who had enrolled in Jones. We spoke to ACEs and spoke to that parent, made it clear that we thought it would be more supportive to have 4 in one school rather than 3 in one. Parent absolutely agreed and appreciated the phone call. And so the choice students will now be clustered. I'm not sure if we'll enroll 4. It could be as low as 2. Again, we're going to keep an eye. We won't know definitively until after October 1st. Even if it's only 2, remember that we offered seats in only 1 grade level this year. Next year, we'll offer seats in 3 grade levels. And so even at 2, if we enroll 2 students per grade level, you're going to see that number jump from 2 to 8. And I think it could even be more than that in year 2. And then we'll offer seats in about 4 grade levels following year. So we see it growing relatively quickly.
And when you say we might only enroll 2, that's because of who comes to us. We have opened up or offered up to 6 seats.
That's exactly right.
So it's not any decision we're making, it's about who ACES brings to us.
Correct.
Okay.
We offered ACES 6 seats and it looks
Right.
like there's interest in 2. Remember that at this moment, we are geographically the furthest
Right.
district along the
Understood.
shoreline from New Haven. So
Right.
some parents may be making choices based on travel time
Sure.
or other considerations.
And it's only the first year.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We need some word of
Right.
mouth
Good
before
point.
we see
Yep.
those numbers go up.
All right. Excellent. Any other questions on this for Dr. Freeman right now?
We'll be back to you with those numbers in October officially.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Also wanted to give you an update on hiring vacancies, hiring and vacancies. At this point, we have hired approximately 25 certified teaching positions. You have a number of those that are in your packet tonight for your approval.
Right.
And at this moment in time, we are only sitting on 2 vacancies.
Oh.
And those were both vacancies that we learned of into the summer months.
That's
And
incredible.
so, yeah, we've been doing really great hiring. I will note that those are 2 special education vacancies, and it's
Right.
my understanding that there are between 2 and 250 special education vacancies across the state of Connecticut right now. So for us to have 2, I'm confident that we will be able to fill those vacancies. It is a shortage area. It's becoming the hottest shortage area, and it is really fueling special education teachers who are mid-career teachers who are moving around districts. I spoke to 2 superintendents this week. One, because we are hiring an experienced special education teacher away from his district. We're within a 30-day window and I owed him a courtesy call. And because I spoke to just one of our neighboring superintendents who wanted to call and talk about the mobility that he's seeing among special education teachers across the state. So it is something that is playing out. We're really excited. I'll make one note. One of the positions that we hired for this week is not a special education position, but we are hiring somebody with 24 years of special education experience with his Orton Gillingham certification, who has, in the middle of his career, completed and achieved another certification, wants to move into that teaching area, and we're bringing that person in from a previous special ed position in another district. It's been a busy summer in the HR office. There's a lot of movements, and we have new teacher orientation, which is scheduled for August 26th and 27th, where we will begin bringing in this new group of teachers. It doesn't matter if this is their first year with their own classroom, or if they're a 24-year veteran, they all go through new teacher orientation with Dr. Goss and Mr. Moden. We're really
Excellent.
excited. And the last item before I complete my report is that we are right in the midst of our 3-day administrative retreat. So the entire extended administrative team today, that's about 21 of us. It's all the central office administrators, building principals, assistant principals, special education coordinators. We spent the day together today at the Mercy Center. Rydell Harrison, who is attending the full retreat with us, but Dr. Harrison took part of the lead in the focus of the day today. Sarah O'Brien from the Ed Ethics team at Harvard University spent the day with us today. We were again practicing our use of case studies as we look at helping all students to know that they belong and focusing on that work. And Dr. Harrison really helped us to continue to talk about student belonging, how student belonging opens up doors for students academically and socially, and what we need to do to minimize the roadblocks to that belonging. Tomorrow, we're really excited. We have Matt Mervis from Ed Advance. I continue to want to say Ed Connections from Ed Advance. It's one of the 6 regional RESCs who will be coming in tomorrow morning to talk with us about artificial intelligence, about technology in the classroom, about smartphone use. We're really going to be thoughtful about the way that we're talking about these topics. We're going to be looking at the new statements the governor's been making in this area. So we're going to be spending the morning with Matt, really digging into that topic. In the afternoon, we're going to be focusing on our shared understanding of high quality instruction. And specifically, Dr. Goss is going to be digging in with the administrators into our new teacher supervision evaluation plan. We received an email from the State Department today. Would you like to share about the email?
Sure, I would really like to, because I'm so proud of that committee and the work that they did. We were approved today with very minimal revisions. The revisions were focused on things where our plan sort of deviated from what they were expecting. So for instance, the legislation requires that the plans say that it's a 1, 2, or 3-year goal. Well, we have a continuous improvement goal, so that verbiage felt silly to us, and so it wasn't included in the original plan, so we had to add that in to meet the state conditions. But there were really minor sort of editorial changes like that, and they were so excited about the work that the committee did that they are going to use it as an exemplar for the state.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
terrific.
so congratulations, committee, they did wonderful work.
Absolutely. That's really great.
That's really exciting. So we dig in really instructionally, both around the technology and around how we support our teachers instructionally tomorrow. It's going to be another really rich day. On Wednesday, we return for a third day. Sarah Gleason from Shipman and Goodwin is going to be joining us. She and Jason are going to be talking to the team about the changing Title IX requirements and how we will continue to address Title IX concerns that may be brought to us, and how we support the administrative team as they support families who are dealing with those sorts of concerns. And then we'll be talking about the conversation we had a few weeks ago when we met in the library at Lakes and talking about the priorities and the initiatives that we'll be moving forward, so that we'll have something from the administrative team to bring to you at your September meeting to ask for your approval around those items. It is nice to be off campus. It is nice to be away. The water at the Mercy Center is beautiful. It's a comfortable, large space, so it's good for the team to be together. And I'll also note, you'll get to meet both of these individuals. Guilford is hosting 2 individuals this year who are completing their internships, working towards their superintendent certification. And so Dr. Kari Fletcher is joining us. He is currently the director of curriculum in Old Saybrook. He's pursuing his superintendent certification through UConn. He'll be working with us as an administrative intern. And Mr. Adam Swinney is an assistant superintendent in East Haven. He's pursuing his certification through the Central program, and he'll be joining us in Guilford this year as well. Both getting to know how we do the work. I'm sure you'll see them both at board meetings and other places. And as soon as I have an opportunity, I'll introduce you to both of them in person.
Terrific.
And that concludes my report.
Wonderful. All right. So we're now up to the board agenda. 9.1 is to act on personnel items. As Dr. Freeman noted, we have a number of teachers for whom we will ratify the appointment. Carrie Alberts at Lakes, pre-K to special education. Adam Alillo to Baldwin Special Education. Kelly Buck, school counselor at Adams in mathematics, is that right? We've got school counselor Adams in mathematics.
Good catch.
I will have to check on that. So I think it's a math position.
Yep.
In either case, we'll ask for you to approve her.
Yes, I'm quite sure there's,
School comes first.
yes,
So.
Yep.
that's Just a typo.
no, I think that's just a typo, you're
Yep.
right. So we think that's math. Samantha Pacelli, the high school special education, Claire Cargill, GHS science, Connor Rebello, Jones physical education, Sandy John at Lake psychologist, John Stearns at Adams in science, and Teresa Krasuski at Lakes, a social worker. So I'm going to seek a motion to ratify the appointment of these 9 individuals.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great, that's unanimous. Thank you. We are being asked to ratify the resignation of the following 2 teachers, Emma Velez, Leet Special Education, and Martha Jennings at Jones Special Education. Is there a motion to ratify these 2 resignations?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Item number 9.2 is to act on budget transfers for the 2023-24 year. Ms. Baldwin referenced these when she was reporting out on the financial reports. As we come to the close of the year, This is a process that happens regularly and allows us to make sure that our 7 budget categories are all within the budget that was assigned at the beginning of the year. So in this case, we are being asked to approve the following budget transfers to cover over expenditures. So the money is going to be transferred to special services in the amount of $505,000. Safety, sanitation, and upkeep of building and grounds in the amount of $445,500. The electricity line in the amount of $244,000. The textbook line in the amount of $2,400. Site improvements in the amount of $134,500. Regular transportation in the amount of $35,000. Fuel in the amount of $42,000. And special education transportation in the amount of $370,000. The total there is $1,778,400. The money to be transferred to cover these expenses will come from the salary category in the amount of $380,000. The benefits budget category in the amount of $800,000. And the tuition line in the amount of $598,400. And as you can imagine, this matches up to a total of $1,778,400. So we are being asked to approve the transfer from salaries, benefits, and tuitions in the amount that I've named to the lines that are over and need this coverage. Is there a motion to approve these budget transfers?
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, that's everybody. Thank you. 9.3, received for possible action a request to waive the 30-day waiting period to purchase a textbook, the College Algebra 13th edition. Dr. Goss, can you help us understand this request? Usually we have a receive item and then we vote the next month. I'm guessing part of it has to do with the fact that it's August 12th.
That's a large part of it, but actually this was not planning on our part.
Okay.
This is a concurrent enrollment course that we were hoping to run through the concurrent enrollment grant, and that's how it got started. But then in working with some of the universities in the state, they operate on an entirely different timeline than we do.
Okay.
So our folks did everything they needed to do and walked away in June thinking we weren't going to be able to offer this course. And then got emails at the end of July that said, hey, great, we're so glad you want to offer this course. And here are the texts that you can use. And so then had to quickly scramble, and kudos to them, because these are teachers who weren't working officially, and they were working because they care about what they do and the kids. So they scrambled and they pulled it together and said, yes, we would like to offer this. And there were, I think, 2 or 3 textbooks that they could choose from, like AP courses.
Okay.
And this is one of them. This is the one that they would like us to approve.
I was just gonna ask, so is this an AP algebra class?
It is a concurrent enrollment, so they
I
would
see.
get
Okay.
the advanced credit for it.
Got it.
I can pass it on over.
Right, so this is the course for which use is projected is ECE College Algebra. We're being asked by Dan Shea and Barbara Tokarska, who are 2 of our
Barbara is both the department head
Right.
and they are both longtime math
longtime
teachers in the
math
district.
teachers in the district.
And we realize this is unusual timing, but would hate not to offer this opportunity to our students because of the approval. So we are in fact asking you tonight to first waive the 30-day process.
Yes.
And then to approve the text for purchase so that we can have it in student hands. Again, recognizing we only had 3 books to choose from that are approved by the university in order to provide a course that allows the concurrent enrollment.
And so what you're telling us is the committee reviewed these 3 texts, chose one, and we are being asked to both waive that 30-day waiting period and then approve the textbook.
Correct.
And I would also assume that
we have kids who expressed interest in taking this class, and we would know that by now because they had to express that interest last spring.
Yes.
Okay,
I think our question was whether or not it would, in fact, carry the dual credit piece, but the course would be offered. And we would just have used a standard algebra
Okay.
text if it had not been for concurrent.
These students will take algebra with the old book and not receive college credit, or take it with this book should you approve it tonight and be able to receive the college
Okay.
credit.
That's
great.
Awesome.
yeah, wonderful. This has to be a vote, so it's, I'm comfortable with this process, but I'm
Yeah.
gonna ask for a motion first. To request to waive the 30-day waiting period to purchase a new textbook, College Algebra 13th edition.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? No, so we are unanimously waiving that waiting period. We are now then going to take a vote to approve the textbook recommendation, College Algebra 13th edition. I believe it's coming around. As was recommended by the selection committee and some of our veteran teachers, including the math department chair. Is there a motion to approve the textbook itself?
So moved.
Second.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? No. All right.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. We have certainly had great success with our wonderful staff and their careful review of text. So I am making this decision very confidently.
You didn't want to.
I do want to look at it. I do want to look at it, but I don't want to keep the meeting and the public waiting. So I'm going to look at it after the meeting. 9.5 is to approve a donation of $3,426.77 from the Guilford Dugout Club for equipment for the baseball program. Which is 2 odd lot batting mats, 1 junior half attack baseball pitching machine, and 2 chain 150-foot extension cords. Is there a motion to approve this donation from the Guilford Dugout Club?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Excellent. And we want to thank the Guilford Dugout Club for their support for our students and making this donation. 9.6 is to approve a donation in the amount of $7,500 from the Baldwin Middle School PTO for the creation of an outdoor learning environment. We have actually also gotten a kind of a plan in front of us that was shared that will allow a variety of outdoor opportunities for Baldwin students. And talked about this with a little more detail at the operations committee. Is there anything, Dr. Freeman, you want to add or about this?
No, just how much we appreciate it. I did during the operations committee meeting point out for the board members that this is different in scale than some of the full playground replacement projects that other PTOs have engaged in. It does not involve in-kind cost or work associated with the facilities department. It is simply a relatively simple and appreciated addition to the spaces where the students experience recess. We very much appreciate the PTO coming up with the suggestion and then making the funds available to do this work. Mr. Gurnham has reviewed the plan. It is supportive of it, and Mr. Hamill as well has reviewed the plan, has worked with the PTO, and is supportive of these changes and appreciative as well.
Terrific. So, is there a motion to approve this $7,500 donation from the Baldwin PTO for the purpose of creating an outdoor learning environment gathering area for Baldwin students?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. That's everyone. And also a big thank you to the Baldwin PTO. Our PTOs do an amazing amount of work in supporting our students in a host of ways. This is just one. 9.7 is to act on the appointment of a new board member to fill the vacant position left by our colleague Christy Faulkner. And I'm going to turn to you, Kristen, to give us a little background, please.
Sure. Just for public awareness, once we have a vacancy on the board, it is up to the board to make a selection and an appointment for the person who replaces the vacant spot. We have to follow town charter guidelines, which dictate that we can never have more than a simple majority on the board for any political party. And we are obligated to try to fill the vacancy from the same political party as the vacancy. So our colleague Christy Faulkner was from the Independent Party. She's from IG Guilford. And we therefore needed to pool independents in the town, registered independents. And from that pool, we had several folks apply for the position. We went through the interview process, meeting all of our critical deadlines, and selected Ralph Brooks to be the next member of the Board of Education. His education is, he graduated from Lehigh University and got his bachelor's from Yale and his master's from Lehigh. He has then worked at the Yale School of Medicine from 2008 until now, in a health research and implementation science dedicated to HIV and AIDS care. He has 2 kids here in the Guilford system, elementary aged students, and he and his wife have been here for over 12 years. So I think we've all had a chance to talk with Ralph. We've all had a chance to evaluate his background and his appropriateness for the Board of Education, and I am happy to recommend him as our next member to replace Christy Faulkner.
Wonderful. Anybody have anything to add before we vote? All right, I'm hearing almost that as a motion. This is that.
That's your job, lady.
Yes. Is there a motion to approve Ralph Brooks as a new member to the Board of Education to fill the position left vacant by Christy Faulkner?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. This is great. We will be a full board again of 9. And we certainly said it before. I want to make sure that, just to say it again, for people who might be hearing it for the first time, Christy Faulkner was a valued colleague, did have a pretty major medical event last winter, was hoping to return the board, and determined a couple months ago that for her own health and well-being, she really could not return and give it 100%. So she very graciously determined that it would be best for the board to fill the vacancy. So we again thank her for her tremendous contributions to the board, and now really are excited to welcome Ralph Brooks. We expect that we will then be having him sworn in at our next Board of Ed meeting. And we'll support him as he becomes one of our colleagues. So that will be terrific. Thank you. Thank you. 9.8 is to act on the extension of the superintendent's contract and compensation for the 2024-25 year. So as we do every year, this spring, we spent time with Dr. Freeman, and then after meeting Dr. Freeman in executive session, conducting an evaluation of Dr. Freeman's performance over the last year. His contract guides some of the focal points of that evaluation, but that process also allows us to conduct in conversation with Dr. Freeman our review of the last year. I am pleased to share that, not surprised, but pleased to share that we have been very pleased with Dr. Freeman's performance over the last year, and really welcome the opportunity to talk about his performance, about the things we're pleased about areas where he thought there could be improvement, and about how we could all work together in areas of continuing to move the district forward. Following that evaluation of Dr. Freeman, we then entered again the next step of the process that happens every year of negotiating the contract in terms of compensation for the next year. A superintendent's contract is typically, as is Dr. Freeman's, a 3-year contract. Every year, we determine the compensation for the first or the next year. And so part of our work was to do that for the 2024-25 school year. We have finished that negotiation with Dr. Freeman and will be putting forth tonight and voting on a contract that increases Dr. Freeman's salary by 2.5% in the next year. I would like to note that both Dr. Freeman and the board were conscious of the challenge of getting the referendum passed on the first go round, and just very conscious of the financial environment. So while we are very pleased, as I've already noted, with Dr. Freeman's performance, he verbally communicated to us, and we were very conscious of trying to also pay attention to our fiscal environment. So the 2.5% reflects a careful decision made by us and does not reflect in any way on a lesser degree of performance by Dr. Freeman. In addition, we will be adding $2,250 to the teacher retirement board contribution that Dr. Freeman pays out every year. That will bring that amount in his contract to $14,500. And we have added to the fringe benefits provision of compensation for up to 5 unused sick days at the time of retirement. This benefit is contingent upon the superintendent retiring as a reason for termination of the contract. Again, this has been a negotiation in which the board and Dr. Freeman are in agreement. And so I am going to ask for a motion by the board to approve this contract.
So moved.
Second.
Are there any comments to make before we make a final vote? All right, all in favor? Aye. Thank you, Dr. Freeman, for another wonderful year of performance. I will note that we now have a second vote as part of this contract, but before we proceed to that, I did want to be sure to mention that 2 of our colleagues, Mr. Arnold Scretta and Ms. Moira Rader, were unable to be here tonight, but were both part of this contract evaluation process and contract negotiation and are very supportive of where we've landed. The second part then of this contract is the opportunity to add a year to the contract. As I noted at the beginning, the superintendent's contract, and this is typical across the state of Connecticut, is a 3-year contract. When we come to the end of the first year, we determine compensation for the next year and have the opportunity then to extend the contract, in this case into the 26-27 year, to restore it to a 3-year contract. Is there a motion to approve the extension of the superintendent's contract to the 26-27 year?
Moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, so we are very pleased with your performance. We certainly would like, as just noted, to have you to continue with us, which is why we would like to extend that contract by a 3rd year. And look forward to working with you into the next school year.
Thank you very much. Again, I very much appreciate your continuing confidence, and of everything that you just went through, the extension of the contract by another year is the most exciting part. And so again, thank you for your continued confidence and for that extension. And I just want to note that I enjoyed and appreciated the conversations that we had around the performance this year. Enormously helpful to have that opportunity. I appreciate that process every year, and again, very much so this year. So thank you. I'm looking forward to another really, really good year together.
Excellent.
Terrific. 9.9. I'm back to Ms. Peck. Policy.
Okay. So these are finally, we get to vote. Policy 5114, this is ages of attendance. As you have heard, the state has changed the birthday for when children can matriculate to kindergarten. So I'm gonna just read the quick change to this policy. Children who have attained the age of 5 years may be admitted to kindergarten. The parent of a child who turns 5 between September 2nd and December 31st of the school year may make a request in writing to the respective building principal requesting the district conduct an assessment of the child to ensure that admitting such child is developmentally appropriate. Upon notification from the superintendent, the Board of Education may vote to admit any child born between September 2nd and December 31st of the school year and who have met the assessment requirements to kindergarten. I'm gonna just brief up that. So the beginning of that says children who will have attained the age of 5 years on or before September 1st of the school year may be admitted to kindergarten. And then subsequently, parents can make a request if their child is born between September 2nd and December 31st.
And in the past 2 Board of Ed meetings, I think we twice have voted
Yes.
on those kinds of requests.
You're already acting on the changed legislation.
Right.
And the opportunity to do so. This policy brings us into compliance with our current practice since the state made the change.
Okay.
Motion to approve.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Terrific. Thank you. And then I think 9 again. Yep, you again.
Okay, policy 6334. Again, this is an action item for tonight. And again, this is a conversation that we've been having for the last several months. Would you like me to read through all of this? There's a little bit more to this, but I'm happy to read through it if that's of interest. Should I just read through it? So that we can.
Go ahead. Sure.
Okay, so this is selection of educational materials. And the changes to the existing policy are as follows. This is relating to materials and material selection. It is therefore the policy of the Guilford Board of Education that books and other materials shall be chosen for values of interest and enlightenment of all students in the community. A book shall not be excluded because of the race, nationality, gender identity, sexual orientation, disability, political or religious views. Every effort will be made to provide material that presents all points of view. Any person who wishes to request reconsideration of the use of any materials in the school must make such requests in writing using the request for reconsideration of educational materials form. If books or other materials, including library materials, are challenged, the following procedure will be implemented. The final decision on controversial materials shall rest with the Board of Education after careful examination and discussion of said materials with professional staff. The board recognizes the right of an individual parent or guardian to request that his or her child not be required to use given materials, provided a written request of reconsideration of educational materials is completed, submitted, and approved by the building principal.
I don't think it has to be written. What do you say?
Yeah, so if you're reading from the actual change, the word written is no longer going to be included, and there would be a capitalization correction that needs to be
Yeah.
made.
Correct.
In the word
I
request.
just realized
Okay.
as you, right.
Thank you. If a parent or guardian would like to request a reconsideration of multiple educational materials, a completed form must be submitted to the building principal for each book or material. The challenged material will remain in use and shall not be removed until the formal due process procedures have been completed. If a book or other material is challenged, goes through reconsideration process, and is allowed to remain in the curriculum or where it is currently housed, The book or material cannot be challenged for reconsideration again within 3 years from the date of the final decision. Any comments?
Yeah, no, I think we're fine with how it's written. B is just provided a capital request of reconsideration.
Yes, yeah. there's-
So it's,
there's
it
no-
is,
there's
it's
no
essentially
capitalization.
written, it's a form, it's just,
That's,
it's
it's the name of
the
the form.
use of the
It is,
form.
exactly.
thank you.
We've
Yeah.
identified the use of the form. Great. Excellent. So this is, again, this is something we, as you've noted, we've been talking about for some time. The committee certainly has been talking about for some time, brought us these revisions last month as a receive item, and we're now being asked to act on it. So is there a motion to approve the policy 6334 selection materials, educational materials as updated by our policy committee?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second, all in favor?
Aye.
That everybody? Yes, all right. Agenda, we're up to reports of committees, 10. Any additional report out from the policy committee? No. Operations committee,
Nothing to know.
curriculum instruction and assessment committee? It's the summer, it's so quiet, it's quiet. This will change starting next month. Liaisons to town committees.
No.
No, okay, and liaison to the board of directors, no update. We're at the public comments. Again, there is no public here, so we will go on. No closing comments from board members at this time, and so I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you for those of us who are watching this live stream. Thank you for joining us.
That was a lot for an audience.